Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Pitt Pod. I am your host G, and we are back with another video. Just wanted to discuss everything that's happened this week in Pittsburgh sports, and what better way to start off with the Steelers taking on the Chargers at Heinz Field in a game where we looked amazing in the first half and fell to shit in the second, in a game that we lost 30-33. To begin with, let's start with the problems, because we'll get the bad out of the way and we'll end it on a high note. First of all, you've got Rivers taking advantage of the mismatch in the open field. Linebackers on Keenan Allen, one of the best wide receivers in the league, is one of the stupidest ideas I've ever come across as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I really didn't understand it. It was evident by the first half that Keenan Allen was going to take advantage of us every single time they had a linebacker on him, whether it be Vince, whether it be LJ Fort, whether it be Bud Dupree. They were just making the most of every opportunity. We still didn't do anything as we came out into the second half, and it really ended up being a discrepancy that defeated us. I do genuinely think that if we had taken Keenan Allen out of the game in terms of play calling, we would have won that game. Keenan Allen, of course, is the guy who had 14 receptions for 148 yards and 1 touchdown in the game. I mean, that's absolutely unreal numbers. That's more than half the yardage of that Philip Rivers attained during the game. Another problem in the game for us was the lack of aggressiveness in the second half. We came out fighting in the first. Ben was throwing the ball really well. We went up 23-7, brought that into locker rooms at halftime, and when we came back out, it was all just run plays, little short dump-off passes, and we failed to get the third down margin every single time pretty much. Jordan Berry was forced to punt 4 times, which he did very well. I'll touch on that later on in the episode. But the key point from it to take is that we need to be aggressive in both halves of the game, even though we're leading. If we take our foot off the pedal, the Chargers are going to pounce, and that's exactly what they did. It really is exactly what they did. Other than that, we've got the referees screwing us over. Now, I don't want to be that typical fan who cries foul of the referees, because, you know, some calls have went our way in recent weeks. That said, the offensive tackle for the Chargers, Sam Tevy, was clearly offsides in a touchdown pass that you could say changed the momentum of the game. They should have never gotten a touchdown pass. He was so clearly offside. I don't know how they didn't see it. Everybody at Heinz Field saw it, even though they are Steelers fans, you know, but still, even the Chargers fans on Twitter, they were admitting to it themselves. Other than that, you've got the 2 offsides for the field goals. Apparently, that the Chargers' snapper, he likes to move his fingers before he snaps the ball, and that's why they thought they could make use of the jumping, the line of scrimmage, and when they tried to do that twice, it got called for offsides, and then the third time, Michael Badgley knocked it through the uprights. But the 2 times before, he missed both tries, so I think that ruined our momentum as well. Now it's our own mistakes. Got the list in front of me here, and it is very long. First of all, you've got the blown coverages. For about the 10th week in a row now, we've seen multiple blown coverages. Then you've got Sean Davis knocking Joe Hayden out, and that destroyed any chance that Joe Hayden was going to intercept the ball, because that was exactly what he was going to do, and the ball bobbled, and it was caught, and they got a touchdown off that. As well, you've got the Desmond King punt return touchdown. What can you say? We're normally great on special teams, but this time we got caught out. It was a really good punt return from Desmond King, and it was hard to be stopped. Once he got outside the field, it was a no-brainer touchdown. Another problem we've got is that we allowed Justin Johnson, the rookie, to run all over us. With just 8 carries, he had 63 yards of 1 touchdown. I feel like he was the sole factor that got them ahead of us in the game, and that's just where they just took over completely. As I alluded to earlier, Keenan Allen, far too much opportunities. We need to change the coach in there. If we know he's a problem, we don't do anything, that's on us. Derwin James as well, his interception completely changed the momentum in the game. Big Ben didn't see him coming. Picked off the pass just like a true professional that he is. He's no longer a rookie in my opinion. I think he might even be an all-pro this year. Shoot me down if you think otherwise, but I really do think he's the next Sean Taylor. Another person comes into question as well in Big Ben. Did his comments earlier in the week, did that jeopardize everything for us? Because even Oseo Minyara said on the NFL show this week that maybe he should focus on his own playing rather than criticising the rest of his teammates because he was at fault for the interception. I probably wouldn't go that far in terms of calling him the reason that we lost the game. However, he only completed 29 of 45 passes. That doesn't look great for a guy who we are supposed to rely on, who's supposed to be responsible for most of our points in a game. We often put the ball in the hands of Big Ben Roethlisberger to win us the game. Not often do we trust the running back more than we do Big Ben. So if he's going to come out of the media and make bold statements, he better be able to back that up and back it up in his next performance, which I don't feel he particularly did to the greatest visibility. And as always, as I said earlier in other podcasts, I do love Big Ben because I love his style. I love that he continues to play the way that Big Ben plays, whether you like it or not, whether he's throwing 10 interceptions or none. He will continue to play his game and he will not change for anybody, and I love that about him. However, we may need to look at different ways to utilise him in terms of what plays we use, because at some point something has to be done in play calling to make sure we're utilising him in the best way possible, because we cannot continue to give away interceptions. Our turnover deficit is really pretty bad. I think it's 20 turnovers produced to the 12 that we've taken away in the game, and it's just not a really good look. If we are throwing interceptions continuously, other teams are going to look to put their tactics in a way that they can take the ball away from us, and if they do that, we will lose every single game. That's 2 losses in a row, but we've got to focus on the positives at times, and there were some positives in the game. First of all, we saw James Conner have his carries increased in the game, within which he had 15 for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns before he was carted off injured in the fourth quarter, which I will allude to later on in the podcast, which is not great news for the next upcoming game. With that said, you've got Antonio Brown, who had another fantastic outing with 154 yards on 10 receptions and another touchdown, and that is an average of 15.4 yards per reception. He is, of course, the best wide receiver in the league. Everybody knows AB84 is the greatest. Hashtag call God, hashtag how's business booming. As well as that, you've got Jalen Samuels, who got some more practice ahead of his start next week against the Raiders. Of course, this wasn't planned, however, with James Conner going down, he will be the starter for next week, but I will discuss that in just 5 more minutes. The O-line as well, suffering just 1 sack at the hands of Joey Bosa, and in terms of defences, you're not going to come up against 2 edge rushers like Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa very often. So for the O-line to protect that well, with Gilbert out injured, is absolutely fantastic. Couldn't be prouder of the guys. The O-line has been probably our best, most consistent unit of all this season, and they continue to be our best asset. Defensively, there was a few positives as well, with that being LJ Fort, who of course had to cover Keenan Allen for a lot of the time. He blocked a punt as well as getting 12 total tackles in the game. That's probably his best game I've seen him play, and he actually looked really, really comfortable out there in Ryan Shazier's absence, who a year on Sunday went down with the injury that altered his life, to be honest with you. But he has been back jogging, even though people said that there was a good chance he might never walk again. He's been out jogging, so that's absolutely fantastic, and hopefully beyond hope, we can get him back one day, even if that is at all possible. But we wish him all the best health regardless. As well as that, you've got Javon Hargrave, who has been the most disruptive piece that we have on the team at the line of scrimmage this year. He had 4 tackles and a sack in the game, and he looked absolutely majestic. Even though we had Stephon Tuitt back, he's really, really turning the heat on as our defensive end. As well as that, you've got Terrell Edmonds, whose best game as a Steeler, in my opinion, occurred this past Sunday with 7 tackles and 1 sack. He again looked like a field general, and as I say, probably his best performance that I've seen him in a black and yellow jersey. Finally, just to finish it off with special teams, Jordan Berry's 4 punts for 204 yards made for an average of 51 yards per punt. He's really coming on in the recent weeks. I've spoken about him in the last 2 other episodes as well as this one. He continues to be a good punter for us, even though he's been poor to begin the season. He's getting better and better, and he had 2 inside the 20 as well. Although one of the punts was a punt return touchdown, it obviously wasn't his fault, it was more the coverage in the open field, so we can't blame him for that one. With the result, the Steelers fall to 7-4-1, with the Ravens chasing closely behind at 7-5. We are atop with the draw, of course, the Browns, who everybody thought was the worst thing in the world. Of course, you never want to draw a game, but it can always help, especially with the AFC North position, and hopefully we can get that crown by the end of the season. The Chargers, on the other hand, they improved to 9-3, which is close behind the Chiefs at 10-2. Could the Chargers usurp the Kings of the West? Who knows? We're about to find out in the NFL. Anything can happen in the NFL, and the Chargers really are a statement of that with the way they came back against us. Time to move on to greener pastures, or maybe not so greener pastures, as I want to start with who is injured for this week's upcoming game against the Raiders. We, of course, travelled to the Coliseum, where we're not very good. We currently have a 2-4 record in terms of when Ben has been the quarterback of our team. Furthermore, we haven't won at the Coliseum since Neil O'Donnell was our quarterback, which is over 20 years ago, and I wasn't even born when we beat them at the Coliseum. However, I think we are going to get it done this week, but with injuries, of course there always is some of those. Cameron Canaday has got a knee injury, who is of course our long snapper who got injured in the game against the Chargers last Sunday. As well as that, you've got Anthony Chickalo, who has an ankle injury, Marcus Gilbert, who is out and has been out for the past 6 weeks with his knee, Roosevelt Nix with his shoulder, and Ryan Switzer, who is in concussion protocol. Definitely out for this week is James Conner with his ankle sprain. It was initially feared to be a contusion in the leg. However, after more researching, it is an ankle sprain. So we've had further moves in the roster with Trey Edmonds, who is the brother of Terrell, being promoted as a running back. Justin Hunter, who was injured in the Chargers game as well, and that overthrown pass by Big Ben, he's been added to the injured reserve list. Matthew Thomas, the linebacker, and Ralph Webb, the running back, have both been added to our practice squad. Now, the game plan in terms of our keys and what we can do is we need to, I think, utilise Stephen Ridley as the starting running back and give him the majority of the hard workload, give him the inside zone carries, all the pushing through defenders, and then you can rotate Jalen Samuels in as the pass catching back, as well as using him on shovel passes, screens, and outside zone plays where acceleration and speed is key. I think he possesses great burst. I think he can also demonstrate he can be very evasive when he's given the ball at the line of scrimmage. As well as that, we can't force the ball downfield. Interceptions have been our thing as of late, and they always are with Big Ben, but it's been even more some in the past couple of weeks. We need to look for the open option. We've got great O-line protection. Our offensive line is our key piece as every other game, and they will continue to give us lots and lots of easy throws in the pocket. We've just got to connect on them. Defensively as ever, forcing Derek Carr into throws that he doesn't want to make are pivotal in the game. We need to continue to change our turnover differential and make sure that we are getting a few interceptions so we can turn the game on its head. There's a storied rivalry with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Oakland Raiders, which goes all the way back to the 1970s with the Immaculate Reception, as well as them being just as good as a team as we were, and of course us knocking them out in many, many playoff races. However, the Oakland Raiders are not the same as any team they've had before. They're 10-2 this season, but we shouldn't underestimate them. With that said, in terms of how to stop the Raiders themselves, they're coming off a defeat, and of course it is a defeat. However, they played very, very well against the Kansas City Chiefs, and they were only defeated 40-33. Derek Carr was very accurate with 29 of 38 passes completed. That gained him 285 yards and 3 touchdowns, which he linked up very well with his two receivers in the tight end Jared Cook, who's a great big tall target, 6'6" ex-basketball player in college. He had 7 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown, as well as Jordy Nelson, who I like to call Mr. Safe Hands, had 10 receptions for 97 yards. Again, they haven't, especially Jordan Nelson, hasn't lived up to the hype, but this could be when he comes into his own, because he needs a job after all this goes down, unless he retires. I don't think he'll want to retire on such a sour note. In terms of the run game, Jalen Richard had 6 carries for 95 yards, which averages 15.8 yards per carry. He looked like somebody that will utilise our defensive line and trying to evade them, so we need to shut him down early on in the game. Defensively is where I think we're going to win this game, however. They are very, very bad defensively. They've managed 0 sacks in the past game against the Chiefs and have the lowest in the NFL in terms of all sacks, with just 10 on the season. Additionally, their offensive line sucks just as bad. TJ Watt and Javon Hargraves, Stephon Tuitt, they all need to make use of that opportunity. They need to get behind the line of scrimmage. They need to get behind the trenches and sack Derek Carr. If we can sack Derek Carr, if we can make a mockery of him, this game will be all but won. We just need to make sure we're aggressive in play calling, and when you're aggressive in play calling, it's hard to beat. The Philadelphia Eagles are the perfect example of that last year. Continue to be aggressive. Don't put your foot off the pedal. Continue to show that you are willing to go further than the other team, like the Kansas City Chiefs. They know that they might not be the best defensively, but they will score more points than you. They know that, you know that, and there's nothing you can do about it. We need to be aggressive and continue to be exactly that. Moving on, it's time to round up Week 13 throughout the NFL, disregarding the Steelers and the Chargers game. We have the Dallas Cowboys winning 13-10 over the New Orleans Saints in Dallas. The Cowboys shut down the Saints defensively, and they continue to increase their stronghold on the NFC East. Dak Prescott is looking much, much better at the helm of the team, and Zeke Elliott is an absolute animal. Everybody knows that. Next up, the Cardinals travelled to Green Bay, where it was snowing at Lambeau Field, and Josh Rosen's measly 11 passes was enough to stop many people's GOAT in Aaron Rodgers. Now, the defeat signalled the end for Mike McCarthy's head coaching career after 12 years in the job. I mean, it was a really quite disrespectful way to get rid of him, in my opinion, a guy who's brought a Super Bowl to the team, and it's not an easy feat, you know. It's not easy to get a Super Bowl as a coach throughout 20 years in the NFL, so what he's done for that team is very important. I think he had just over 60% in terms of winning percentage as the head coach there, and just a catastrophic season so far. With a guy like Aaron Rodgers, you can't waste that talent. I think it is probably the right decision, but I thought they would give him at least till the end of the season, because the Packers aren't going to contend for the playoffs this year. Regardless, the offensive coordinator, Joe Philbin, will assume the vacant role. In what's probably been the shock result of Week 13, the Jaguars won 6-0 over the Colts. It was just a defensive shutout, another defensive performance, and it just stopped the high-flying Colts offense. They indeed intercepted Andrew Luck. Cody Kessler got his first start and was pretty solid, to be honest. He produced 150 yards on 18 of 24 passes, and he did look like he was choosing all the right throws. The Colts, on the other hand, they fall to 6-6, whilst the Jaguars improved to 4-8. Of course, the Jaguars' playoff hopes are completely out of contention right now, but they need the defense to show up and play for their careers, really. Next up, we have divisional rivals Baltimore Ravens winning 26-16 over the Atlanta Falcons. Lamar Jackson once again just running his heart out with 17 rushes for 75 yards and a touchdown, whilst passing for 125 yards. He led his team to the victory, and they are now 7-5 on the season. The Falcons, of course, their playoff hopes are completely diminished. They look like a broken team, and it's just not looking good out there in Atlanta. For the Patriots, they won 24-10 over the Vikings. Again, the third defensive great performance of the week. Defeat doesn't do much for the Minnesota Vikings because every team in the NFC North lost, including the Bears this week. So that means they continue to stay in second place. With that in mind, they may find themselves out of the wildcard spot if they continue to lose points. In the best of the rest results, you've got the Giants beating the Bears 30-27, the Texans beating the Browns 29-13, the Buccaneers pulled off a surprise upset against the Panthers 24-17, the Dolphins won 21-17 over the Bills, the Bengals got their asses kicked by the Broncos 24-10, the Lions lost 16-30 to the Rams, the Titans got a big upset win 26-22 over the Jets, with them being underdogs and behind for much of the game. The Seahawks won 43-16 over the lowly 49ers, and then the Eagles on Monday Night Football trashed the Washington Redskins 28-13. That brings us on to our power rankings, and of course at number 1 are the 11-1 Los Angeles Rams. They proved in their last game against the Detroit Lions that even when they play bad, they can still pull out the win. I do also think that they've got the best defense in the league on paper, and if they get Aqib Talib back playing the way that he possibly can, and make sure he's not injured, I think they'll definitely be in the Super Bowl, as I said in episode 1 of the podcast. Second, you have the New Orleans Saints, and although they'll be back next week in the game against the Dallas Cowboys, they proved that they can be beaten. They showed weaknesses. They showed that there's an inept ability to be able to stop Drew Brees by pressuring him, to making him force throws that he doesn't want to necessarily make. And although they're 10-2 on the season, they do look like a team who can be beaten, even though I think they're the most complete team in the league. The Kansas City Chiefs, who are 10-2, come in at third. Patrick Mahomes, he's absolutely unreal. Even without Kareem Hunt, who I'm going to touch on later, unfortunately, for you guys who don't want to hear it, you've probably heard it too much already. Number 4 is the Los Angeles Chargers, who are coming off a big win against us, as aforementioned. They've got great resiliency. They came from behind 23-7. They just continue to fight hard. Phillip Rivers, he's a stud, to be honest, let's just say that. And the play calling's excellent, in my opinion. They've really got it going in Los Angeles, and I think that they will also contend in the playoffs this year. Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys coming at number 5 at 7-5. As I said earlier, Dak Prescott, he's playing really well at the moment. He's not forcing throws, he's not making stupid decisions, he's being accurate, and that's something I like to see for Dak Prescott, because he gets a lot of hate, even though I hate the Cowboys. Zeke Elliott, again, he's just an absolute animal, and defensively, they're one of the best teams in the NFC, with Leighton Van Der Esch as the linebacker. He is a contender for Rookie of the Year as well there. Number 6 are the Houston Texans. Deshaun Watson, dual threat talent, excellent defense also with J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney. They've really got it going in Houston, and they are building a real playoff push, as well as they're probably definitely going to get the AFC South title. Number 7, New England Patriots. And although they're fairly low on this list for being a 9-3 team with Tom Brady, they don't look all that talented. If you go back and watch the game against the Minnesota Vikings, you'll see Tom Brady makes a lot of dump-off little passes, and it's all the receivers that are really doing all the heavy-duty work. In terms of defense, they look like they're a team that can really be taken advantage of, despite their really good defensive performance recently against the Vikings. I just don't think they've got any star players on defense, and although they've been getting the job done so far, I think they're yet to come against a team who can really take advantage of them. And for teams that they have, they've lost a game other than the Kansas City Chiefs, who of course, that was early in the season, it handed the Chiefs the first loss. Number 8 are the Chicago Bears, who fell to 8-4 this past weekend against the New York Giants, and of course it was a tough defeat, but we all know they will bounce back. They've got one of the best defenses in the league. They've got the league leaders in turnovers in their defense. They've got Khalil Mack as well, Hakeem Hicks. Mitchell Trubisky coming back, with this week hopefully returning from his injury. They will be another dominant force in the NFC, and the NFC North in particular. Coming in at number 9 are the Seattle Seahawks, who have 3 wins in a row under their belt. Russell Wilson's dominating at the helm of the team, and defensively they are pretty sound. They look like a team who might actually make a surge for the playoffs, and I do think they'll get a wildcard spot in the NFC. The Baltimore Ravens, of course, are number 10. Defensively, they are really good. I really do think that's their best asset on the team, but Lamar Jackson's breathed a new lease of life for me into the Ravens. I think that with Joe Flacco being out injured, it's really provided an opportunity for Lamar Jackson to showcase what he can do, and it's rubbing off on his teammates. His teammates are taking a lot of pleasure playing with a guy of his caliber, and I think he's doing really, really good things for the Baltimore Ravens as a franchise. And if they continue to inject this young talent and this young fieriness into the team, they could really find themselves in a playoff position, which obviously puts the Steelers in a difficult position. That said, I think we have enough to contend with them. I think our offense is good enough to contend with what the Baltimore Ravens could put up on the other side of things. But if Lamar Jackson continues to breathe life into the franchise, the Ravens could be scary for the playoffs. I do also think that his run style isn't exactly the best thing for the NFL in terms of his player safety, because he could get injured very, very easily if he runs the ball too much. That said, it's so obvious that defenders are scared to tackle these days. They're scared to put a tackle on the quarterback because they know they'll get injured, and sometimes I've seen players that are scared to put a tackle on the quarterback injure themselves because they're trying to fall outside of the tackle, and when you do that, when you are worrying about making a tackle, that's when you get injured. So it could work in their favour as well as getting the penalties for unnecessary roughness on the quarterback. There's two ways to look at it, but right now the Baltimore Ravens are number 10 in the power rankings. Time to turn our attention to the Kareem Hunt case. A video of Kareem Hunt attacking a woman surfaced earlier this week from TMZ. I believe it was the Friday before the game on Sunday, and it happened in Cleveland, Ohio in February. In the video you can see that everybody's having an argument. I don't know what it's about. There's no speech you can hear, but you can obviously see them talking and shouting at each other. But all involved appeared to be intoxicated. That's one thing. They were all moving, they were all wobbling, they all seemed to be pushing each other about and pulling. A lot of it was pulling Kareem Hunt back, but as well as that, there was multiple females. I'm not sure if it was multiple or the same lady, but they were definitely antagonizing the group, especially Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt, to begin with, seemed to be backing away, and then she said something and that just infuriated him. He continued to not step back and continued to follow the aggressor, sort of the person who's been trying to antagonize him. He then pushes one woman, and I'm not sure if it's the same woman, but he kicks another woman. I think it could be the same one, I'm not sure, but there's one lady lying on the floor and he kicks her. It's like in the thigh region. It didn't seem like there was too much force behind the kick, but nonetheless, you should never kick a woman at all, especially Kareem Hunt. But in any case, no man, no woman, nobody should be kicking anyone. And it's simply not a good look for Kareem Hunt, who was released earlier this week by the Chiefs after they saw the evidence. And although the Chiefs knew about the incident back in February, they took Hunt's failure to disclose the true details of the incident to heart. And that's the reason they let him go, rather than because of what he did. It was because he didn't tell them the full story. They released the following statement after the video was released by TMZ, saying, "Earlier this year, we were made aware of an incident involving running back Kareem Hunt. At that time, the NFL and law enforcement initiated investigations into the issue. As part of our internal discussions with Kareem, several members of our management team spoke directly to him. Kareem was not truthful in those discussions. The video released today confirms that fact. We are releasing Kareem immediately." Now, for a guy to go from the leading rusher in 2017 to having a good solid year in 2018, to then have his career stripped from him after a silly incident, which I'm sure he'll admit was silly as well, to have all that go down the drain in one swift movement, even though it happened in February, is, to me, absolutely ridiculous. I personally don't think that he should be banned from the game forever. I think he should be banned for momentarily. I think the NFL should do a proper investigation. I know there's been some other allegations come up about Kareem Hunt in the days ensuing from the investigation and the whole TMZ release date and everything like that. So there obviously is something fishy going on there. There's something fishy going on with the NFL too. The NFL should have investigated this when it first came out. I know that the video evidence, the Chiefs could not obtain the video evidence because the hotel would only give it to law enforcement. Now, with that being said, the NFL has to track that down because it's an NFL star. It's potentially damaging to the NFL, and it seems that if they could have gotten away with it, if they could have just put it to bed and forgotten all about it, they would have. But because it's surfaced, both the Chiefs and the NFL are feeling like they have to make a decision about this. I think that if this video hadn't come out, nothing would be said, and that's clearly evident because it happened in February. Now it is December. And it's ridiculous to think to me that if they knew about this, there's not all that much that Kareem Hunt can hide. If he told the Chiefs that he attacked somebody, Isn't that enough? Doesn't it have to be, isn't that grounds to be disciplined by the NFL, by the Chiefs? Isn't that enough grounds? I just don't understand what he could have told them that was false. If they knew about the incident, they should have done the digging. And they didn't. That's a simple case of it. So Kareem Hunt, obviously, he's guilty. The woman in it isn't as innocent as everybody would have first thought. She's clearly antagonising Kareem Hunt, although she didn't deserve to be kicked. She obviously shouldn't have been doing that either. I think also TMZ reported that she wouldn't leave the hotel room after declining to get with one of Kareem Hunt's people. I don't know 100% about all the details, but at the end of the day, the NFL and the Chiefs, they should. And if they are going to discipline somebody just because the videos come out, it's not a good look for them either. So something really has to be done about this whole system that's going on at this minute in time. But Kareem Hunt's career is up in smoke at this moment in time. Tracandrick West is back with the Chiefs. He knows the playbook exceptionally well. I think it was a shame for him to get cut. I think he's a really good running back, and he will slot in there nicely. So the Chiefs will do absolutely fine. Kareem Hunt, will he get another career somewhere else on another team? I'm not 100% sure, but if you guys think so, leave that in the comment section down below. But with that being said, it's time to turn our attention to the Pitt Panthers, who this week were in the ACC Conference Championship game against the number 2 Clemson Tigers, and boy did it go badly. Everybody knew from the start it was going to go really badly, simply because the Pitt Panthers are nowhere near the level of an undefeated team in the Clemson Tigers. With that being said, Travis Etienne opened the scoring with a 75-yard touchdown on the opening drive, so it was kind of doomed from there onwards. But in terms of the Panthers, let's just try and get some positives. There aren't any for our quarterback, Kenny Pickett, who had 4 of 16 passes completed for just 8 yards and 1 interception. That's probably the worst stat line I've ever seen in my whole entire life, I would say. Regardless, on the run game, we had Darren Hall, who had 8 rushes for 86 yards, and Quadri Olison, who had 13 rushes for 56 yards. In the rush game, it wasn't too bad. Both of those running backs got 1,000 rushing yards for the season, so that's very good for them. But that's all the positives, really. Our leading receiver had 10 yards on the day, so not great there. Of course, he can't do much if the ball's not being thrown to him at the end of the day. For the Tigers, you have their freshman quarterback, who was touted coming out of high school as a once-in-a-lifetime kind of talent. He had 12 passes completed of 24 for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is really, really good for somebody in his freshman year competing in a conference championship game. He will be something in the next 4 years when he comes to the NFL, depending on whether he fulfills the whole of his time at college. Travis Etienne, who we alluded to earlier with the opening touchdown drive, he had 12 rushes, 156 yards, and the aforementioned touchdown. T. Higgins was their leading receiver in terms of touchdowns. He had 2 on the day, 3 receptions, 36 yards. To be honest, it was just complete and utter dominance. It means that Clemson remain undeniable as a candidate for the playoffs. They get into the playoffs along with Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and Alabama. They will also be competing in the Cotton Bowl Classic on December 29th, as well as clinching their 4th conference championship in as many years. So, complete dominance from Clemson. They probably will do it for another 4 years. I don't see anybody beating them just with the way they recruit their prospects. So they are a fantastic, fantastic organisation, and they deserved all the success, and I hope they go on to win in the playoffs too. Now, obviously, the loss means the Pittsburgh Panthers' season is over, and now it's time to turn our attention to the Pittsburgh Penguins. They travelled to the Pepsi Center to face the Avalanche in the latest game since the podcast, and although the Avs are a talented team performing well under the circumstances, the Penguins did have a chance to cause an upset. They'd been playing very well in the weeks building up, although a couple of losses here and there, they still contended in every single game, and this being the game that took place just after the second episode of the podcast. And they battled all the way. They got it back to 3-3 after being behind in a deficit. However, the Avalanche came away with a victory, 6-3, making it 8 wins from 9 for them. In terms of the goal scorers, Nathan McKinnon, Gabriel Landeskog, Eric Johnson, Samuel Girard, Carl Söderberg, and Colin Wilson all got goals on the day. Nathan McKinnon also had 3 assists, which is very, very notable. A guy who's leading the league in scoring for the Avalanche and is a total team player. The Avs are really going to go far this season. For the Pittsburgh Penguins, Sidney Crosby got all 3 of her goals as well. Jake Wentzel, Juuso Riikola, and Dominic Simon all getting an assist on the day. It was still not enough for the victory. However, the Pens did look pretty good despite the defeat. They moved on to the game against the Philadelphia Flyers, and it continued the heated Pittsburgh-Philadelphia rivalry as always. Once again, despite leading twice in the game and taking the initiative early on with Sidney Crosby scoring on their first possession, the Pens did suffer a 4-2 defeat. Sidney Crosby, as I said earlier, scored 1 goal. Brian Dumoulin assisted, Gwentzell again with another assist, and Riley Sheehan with the other goal for the Penguins. As for the Flyers, Jake Voracek, Claude Giroux, Travis Konecny, and Dale Weisse all got goals in that game. And the Philadelphia Flyers have one more win than the Penguins. Who would have thought it, especially with the way the Penguins have been playing. They've been really inept in trying to score goals. A lot of the games that I saw in Philadelphia, they seemed like they couldn't put the puck in the back of the net if I gave them $100 million for it. However, the Penguins suffered a defeat, and they move on to the Avalanche in a rematch. And this time it was played at the PPG Paints Arena, which is of course the home of the Penguins. And they returned the favour, 6-3 themselves this time for the Penguins. Patrick Hornqvist got a goal and got 3 goals and an assist. Evgeny Malkin with 1 goal. Derek Brassard with 1 goal. Jake Gwentzell got a goal and an assist. Then for the Avalanche, Tyson Barrie, Matt Nieto, and Karel Söderberg all got goals for the Avalanche. This string of results means that the Penguins now improved to 11-10-5 in the season, which leaves them 6th in the Metropolitan Division. They now face the Islanders twice in the next week, as well as the Senators in the next block of games. So be sure to look out for those. And if you guys see me on Twitter, which is @ThePitPod, please @ me and we can discuss the games as they're happening live. However, for now, folks, that is all. That has been episode 3. I do hope, as always, that you have enjoyed the podcast. If you have, please leave a like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. I want to get this thing onto a bigger platform. I want to continue to make great content. Next week, a couple of things we'll be previewing and reviewing. We've obviously got the review of the Pittsburgh Steelers versus Oakland game, as well as previewing the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Patriots. We'll have a roundup of all the Penguins' games. I'll also be discussing the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, who I have now become an official member of the Steel Army, which is a supporters club. So that's something to look forward to also. And I just really cannot wait to get into the next batch of stuff. I'll also be documenting a player of the Pittsburgh Steelers. You guys can find out who that is next week. So if you have enjoyed, please leave a like. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share it with your friends. And I will see you next week. Jensburg, I love you.